everyone, welcome back to another video. I know that it's been a while since my last video went up. A few things have happened personally in my life. One of them was that the company I was working for went under. I have found a new job and I've been really enjoying my new role. I work at a little bookshop, and in between this time of getting a new job, I've kind of put my wildlife photography to one side just to adjust to a new routine. Normally winter is a time where I take a step back, you know, have a bit of that rest. Winter is a time for winding down, slowing down, and it's come at a right time to do so. So in this video I'll be going over my top 12 favourite images taken this year, 2024. I'll be showing the images alongside while I'm talking, and yeah, it's just going to be a recap of the year and my favourite images taken from this year. So 2024 was definitely a year for firsts for me. Going right back to the start of the year in January, it was getting to the tail end of the waxwing eruption. There was lots of reports all over the country, even far down south I think as Essex way or even Cornwall. And I was fortunate enough to hear that there was a small flock not too far from where I live, about 20 minutes away. So probably on the last week that the waxwings were due to depart, I went to that area and I saw them. It was a really wonderful moment to have. I've never seen a waxwing before. There were 6 of them all together. It was a bit of an issue in regards to the lighting. It was very overcast. It was also quite windy. So trying to get a picture of the waxwings sort of perched on a branch, I had to contend with the wind because they were moving around quite a lot. And also the background was pretty dull. But for seeing them for the first time, that sort of overridden me getting a nice image. It was just nice to see them or hear them calling, flying around together, and at one moment they flew down to a lower branch and I was able to get some really nice clear portrait shots. And this is probably one of the images that I really enjoyed getting out of it. They're just such a cool looking bird. Another first for me was the bittern. They had eluded me for quite some time. They were reported at my local reserve, but they were either too far away or the days that I went they just didn't appear. So I went over to RSPB Lakenheath. That's one of the videos, about 2 or 3 videos ago I went there. Not expecting to see a bittern that day. I had in mind a kingfisher picture, which I did get, and not long after that I was able to see the bittern. I missed it flying in because I was focused on a hobby, but it flew in, landed in a reed bed, and I really like this image in that it's different to my usual style. I do like to get sort of a close-up of the species, but with this one it was definitely more environmental, and to get all the reeds and just to see how well camouflage they can be. So again, really thrilled to have seen a bittern for the first time this year. One of the most surprising encounters I had this year was seeing a bat in daylight. It was when I was doing one of my, I think it's my second or third point of view video. When I was recording, I didn't know what I was going to find. I thought it was going to be, you know, quite a dull video. So at that point in the video, I thought I saw a buzzard fly through, and I was trying to work out where it had landed. And that was when something really small flitting about caught my eye. And yeah, it was a bat. I was in complete shock, as you could probably tell if you were to watch that video back.
Oh my god, there's a bat. What? There's a... What?
Again, I did have issues with the lighting. I was basically under a tree canopy, whereas the bat was flying around out in the open. So there was issues in getting the lighting right. But when it came to editing, I actually found that changing it to black and white was actually more effective, because it was really hard to get the colours right in regards to where the lighting was and having too much shadows on the leaves around it. So changing it to a black and white image was actually a good call, I think. And yeah, just the one where the light is coming through the bat's wings is definitely one of my favourites. And again, just such a surprising encounter to have. Touching back on the bittern picture where it was more environmental, I had a couple of opportunities to do that elsewhere. I travelled over to West Wales near Cardigan Bay, and my husband and I went out on the boat trip to see the seabird colony on the cliffs nearby. And yeah, we were just going by this massive sea cliff, and there was, I think it was kittiwakes, I think there was a few guillemots as well. all just hanging out on this sea cliff. And again, I approached it in regards to, rather than getting a close-up shot of a bird in flight or sitting on the water or singling out a bird on the cliff, I wanted to capture the whole environment. And there was an interesting part of the cliff where one was sort of concealed in darkness, or it was a darker type of material against a lighter side. And yeah, the birds are all perched on there, and I took that opportunity to get those contrasts of the lighter and the darker side of the cliffs, and put it into black and white. And I really like it. I like how it just captures the ruggedness of the environment. And you know, it's a very harsh environment that these birds do live in when they come on land to breed. So yeah, I really like that one. And then another one that was environmental, it was just before I came across the bat. There was a little egret over the other side of this river, or a little weir, and it flew up into a tree, and I was like, oh, I've never seen a little egret in a tree before. And it was a unusual perspective to see, you know, this bird you normally see out on the wetlands hunting, out on you know, flat ground, and see it up in a tree was definitely a different viewpoint. So yeah, again, getting it perched up in the tree, getting a bit more of the environment in, and the harshness of the contrast between a dark green background and this brilliant bright white bird is another picture that I've come to love over time. With wildlife photography, it's not just about going to far off locations to get certain images of certain species. You can very easily find those species either at your local park, or in my case, in my back garden. And for the last 5 or 6 years, we've actually had starlings nest in our roof of our house. And it was coming up to the tail end of spring, heading into summer, and all of the starling chicks were out. So as you can imagine, it was very loud, it was very noisy. I was going through the pictures not so long ago, and I came across one where it was one of the adults, and the light was hitting it just right, so much so that you could see more of the iridescence on the chest. And that one's one I've come to really like, because you know, it's taken in my own back garden, and it's a bird that's can be quite underestimated in terms of, you know, the iridescent colours, and also when it comes to the murmurations during winter time. If it wasn't raining and windy as it is now, I would definitely be going out to see them, but the weather's just been so poor, I haven't had the chance yet. But to see them earlier on in the year in my garden and getting those closer shots, yeah, they're really special for me. There was an encounter in my garden again, and it was with a starling, but it was also with a sparrowhawk. And we know that we get at least the female sparrowhawk hunting in our garden. We've seen it multiple times, but on this occasion I heard a lot of squawking out on the decking. So ran into the kitchen, looked out the window, and there was the sparrowhawk holding down a starling. So I bolted upstairs, grabbed my camera, ran back down, and one of the kitchen windows was already open, so I knew I didn't have to go out to get a picture. I could just shoot it from indoors. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not the best image. My angles were a bit off, and the floor was the background basically, so everything wasn't as nice in terms of depth of field as I wanted it to be. But it was such, you know, a quick event to happen, and just to capture it from where I was positioned and where the bird was on the decking, it was amazing to watch. It was obviously brutal because, you know, this starling was fighting for its life, and after a while the sparrowhawk flew off the decking down the garden, and yeah, the starling somehow managed to escape its grasp. It was it's quite shocking, and it flew into the hedge, and I think it's okay. It definitely flew off, and it still seemed, you know, alert. And yeah, I'd like to see the sparrowhawk back again, and maybe I will be a bit more prepared if that ever happens. But yeah, an amazing encounter to have right in my own back garden. Going back to this year being a year of firsts, I had a really great opportunity to go to a fellow photographer's hide, and it was to see badgers coming to feed. I had seen badgers in the past, never got a clear picture. It was either way too dark, or one of the encounters I had, I only just saw the badger's face and then it scurried off. So this was a really good opportunity for me to just sit in the hide and wait to see if they appear. And luckily they did, just before it got too dark to get any decent pictures. There was 4 in total, I believe, and yeah, they came over. There was a little reflection pool out the front, and it was wonderful to hear them feeding, you know, like sniffling around and eating the food that was put out for them. And I only got probably 5 images out of it, and one of them was a good image. And again, it's not so much, you know, getting the best picture or the perfect picture of them straight away. It was just capturing that moment in time, and again, a really wonderful, magical moment to have with wildlife, and to see, you know, a mammal that has been persecuted for years and years and it's still going on. It was a real privilege to see, you know, a healthy population not too far from where I live. And again, just to have that image to take me back to that moment and remember hearing them sniffling around and just being in, you know, in the moment, present with them as well. There was another location, again not too far away, one of my local nature reserves. I didn't intend to record a video there. I just wanted to go, you know, take my camera out, not have to worry about recording anything. And literally from the car park to the nearby lake, there was movement in the water, and it was too large to be a bird of any kind. So I sat down on the ground and held my camera up, looked through the viewfinder, and it was 3 otters. It was a mum and 2 cubs. And you know those moments in wildlife where you just don't know what's going to happen, and it turns out to be one of the most special, unforgettable moments. This was one of them. The mum swam across the lake with the 2 cubs. They went into the reeds, and I just waited to see if they would come out again. And luckily they did. The mum ventured out first to make sure everything was safe for the cubs to venture out as well. So the mum obviously saw me, but I stayed still. I carried on getting a few video footage as it swam past, and then obviously got some pictures as well. And eventually she called her cubs to move along, and yeah, just, you know, it lasted 2 minutes, if that. And it's another memory with wildlife that I know I won't forget very soon. And again, having it so close to home, obviously not in my back garden, but having it at a location that's 5-10 minutes drive, that location then becomes more special to you. And especially in my case, in that I visited one of these nature reserves basically throughout my whole life, probably when I was about 6 years old onwards. So it's a special place for me anyway, but to think back and think of all the other wonderful encounters I've had with wildlife, and again to come out with a picture that I wasn't expecting, and luckily it came out well. The exposure wasn't too bright. Yeah, just another wonderful moment with wildlife. So I imagine a lot of wildlife photographers, specifically bird photographers, will be very familiar with trying to get birds in flight. It's freezing that moment in time where there's a bird gliding across in front of you. It can be a tricky thing to master, and I usually go for having a bird still sitting on a branch and not doing much. But there was a couple of opportunities this year where I could get these birds in flight, and you know, having the knowledge that I know and just taking the shots, as many as I can in that moment, it would give me a better opportunity to get those birds in flight shots, which are seldom seen when I'm going out photographing them. But on 2 occasions, one of them was when I visited Wales. We were in a bird hide, me and my husband, and the swallows, there must have been 6 at one time, and they were all flying right up close to the hide viewpoint. And I saw this as a really good opportunity to get a swallow in flight. You know, they're one of the fastest birds that come over in the summertime, that against the swifts. But after a while, I noticed their flight pattern of, you know, whereabouts they would emerge and the path they would take in front of the hide. So I set myself up and I just carried on shooting so many images. I must have been over 200 images that I was trying to get of these swallows flying in front of the hide, and probably 3 came out in focus. And you know, it's a first for me to get these small, very fast birds in flight. And yeah, it's an image that, again, I'm really proud of getting. And putting together what I know in terms of how to set up my camera, and then just learning the behaviour is really important if you want to get those particular shots of that bird. And then another opportunity was up on Mull, where I was out on a whale watching trip, and usually we get quite a lot of gannets that either fly across the boat or they're just resting on the water. And there was this one adult gannet that was floating alongside, the boat was moving, and then it took off, and I thought, okay, it's in focus through my camera, let's just get some flight shots as it took off. And it was a very rare occasion because my camera was the 6D and it takes like 4.5 shots a second. So it's a very long gap in between shots and you can miss a lot of action as well. But on this occasion, it managed to keep the bird in focus, and it's a good enough sequence, in my opinion, in that you get it from takeoff and as it flies up into the air. So it's not so much one picture of it in flight, it is just that sequence in itself. Really happy with it. Was very surprised that all of those shots came out in focus. And yeah, just to think, you know, I've got more birds in flight than I've taken in, you know, the amount of time I've been doing wildlife photography, which is about 10 years, to be honest. And yeah, just to have that and remembering that moment, I remember looking on the back of the camera, I was like, oh yes, finally getting one, or getting a sequence of flight shots all in focus. And a gannet is a wonderful bird anyway. I'll say that for a lot of bird species, I think. But yeah, really wonderful sequence of images to get. So this now comes to my final favourite image of this year, and it's going back to the start of 2024 again, when I went up to the Yorkshire Dales to find the red squirrels again. And from my first encounter at the end of 2023, I felt as though the images then, I didn't feel as prepared as I wanted to be. So when I visited this red squirrel sanctuary, I really wanted to capture not just better images, but to really capture the character of a red squirrel. You know, they're adorable and people love them, and I felt as though the pictures I took last time didn't really match that. You know, I got some nice shots, but I felt as though now I know what the environment looked like and I understood the behaviour of the red squirrels. I knew that if I went to go back again, I would have a clearer idea in mind of what I wanted to capture and how I wanted to do that within the environment I was in. And the picture that actually came out from that whole encounter was actually before I got to the feeding station. Again, my husband was with me and we were walking down to this viewing area, and we saw the first red squirrel on the path, and it climbed up a tree that was right next to the path we were walking on, and it stopped midway up and it looking at us, and that was my favourite shot. It wasn't even taken at the viewing area. I just really like how this turned out. The lighting on the squirrel itself was really nice, and to get it in an environment where, you know, you're familiar with, you know, they live in the trees and they get their food from the trees, and I really feel like it captured the character well in this image. So I hope that you enjoyed this quite long video. So I'd love to hear your own wildlife encounters this year, whether you came away with a lifer or you went on an amazing expedition somewhere. You know, leave them all in the comments below. As we approach 2025, I'm really looking forward to the images that I have in mind to take, and obviously to share the journey with you as well. With that, I'll see you all again next time. Goodbye.